Okay, so you want to own a gaming studio. Find some talented people, give them computers, build a great game, and watch the money roll in. That is the version of this business that lives in people's heads. A creative endeavor that, if the game is good enough, becomes a money-printing machine. And to be fair, sometimes it does. When it works spectacularly. But the gap between what this business looks like from the outside and what it actually costs to survive inside it is enormous. And almost nobody talks about the part where you spend 5 years and tens of millions of dollars before a single person can even buy your game. So let us go through the whole thing. What it actually takes to own a gaming studio, where every dollar goes, and why this industry produces some of the biggest financial disasters in entertainment. Not because the people running these companies are bad at their jobs, but because the economics here are quietly brutal in ways that are almost invisible until it is too late. The first thing you need to understand is what you are actually buying when you own a gaming studio. Unlike a restaurant, where you can point at the tables and the kitchen equipment and the lease, a gaming studio's most valuable assets are things you cannot see. The primary asset walks out of the building every evening and does not come back until Monday morning. What you actually own is people. Programmers, designers, artists, animators, writers, producers, testers, and executives who keep the whole operation moving. You also own intellectual property, the characters, the worlds, the storylines, the game mechanics that belong to your studio. And you own the institutional knowledge of how to build a game from scratch, which sounds simple until you try it and realize it's one of the most complex creative and technical challenges in modern media. The reason this matters financially is that human talent and intellectual property have a completely different cost structure than physical inventory. A restaurant can cut costs by ordering fewer ingredients. A retailer can slow down purchases if sales soften. A gaming studio cannot stop paying its developers any more than a law firm can stop paying its lawyers. The moment you build a team, you have committed to a fixed monthly cash burn that does not care whether the game is on track or 6 months behind schedule. Now here is where the money actually starts leaving your account. And this is the part that genuinely shocks people who are new to this industry. The first bill arrives before the game exists. Before you have built anything anyone can play, before you have sold a single copy, you are already spending money every single day. You need office space or remote infrastructure if your team works from home. You need software, licenses for the tools your artists use to model characters and environments, licenses for the engine your programmers use to build the game, licenses for the systems your team uses to manage their work and track their progress. You need hardware, high-end development computers, specialized testing equipment for the consoles your game will run on, and servers for your internal development environment. You need legal services for contracts, intellectual property filings, and employment agreements. You need accountants. You need managers to keep the whole thing organized. And all of that is before a single line of game code has been written. A mid-sized studio with 100 developers, at a fully loaded cost, meaning salary plus benefits, payroll taxes, healthcare, and retirement contributions of around $12,000 per person per month, is burning through $1.2 million every single month just in staff costs alone. Over a 4-year development cycle, that is $57.6 million in payroll before you add a single dollar of software, hardware, rent, legal fees, or anything else. That is the financial reality of building games at any kind of serious scale. And the reason payroll is so dominant is that game development is almost entirely a human labor enterprise. Games are made almost entirely of time. Programmer time, artist time, designer time, testing time. Industry data consistently shows that payroll accounts for somewhere between 70 and 80% of a studio's total spending during the development phase. Everything else is in the remaining 20 to 30%. The hubs for serious game development are places like Seattle, Los Angeles, Austin, London, and Montreal. High-cost cities in high-cost countries. A senior engine programmer in the United States with 5 or more years of experience is earning somewhere between $140,000 and $185,000 a year in base salary. And that is before you add the full loaded employment cost on top. A game director or studio head is well above $200,000 a year. These are not numbers you can negotiate your way out of if you want talent that can actually ship a competitive product. And here is the thing that turns development timelines into financial catastrophes. If a game runs into technical problems, and they almost always do, and the release gets pushed back by 6 months, that is not just a 6-month delay in revenue. That is 6 additional months of the full payroll bill. For a 200-person studio at $12,500 per person per month, a 6-month delay adds $15 million directly to the cost of the game. $15 million that does not make the game a single dollar larger in the market. It does not increase the price you can charge. It does not expand the audience. It just makes the hole you have to climb out of that much deeper. This is why game development timelines are not just a creative problem. They are a financial survival problem. And the reason games take so long to make in the first place is genuinely fascinating from a systems perspective. A modern game is not one product. It is dozens of interconnected systems that all have to work together perfectly at 60 frames per second on hardware with hard limits. The physics engine has to talk to the animation system. The animation system has to talk to the AI. The AI has to talk to the level design. The level design has to be tested across every configuration of hardware you are releasing on. Add one new feature, say, a grappling hook for your main character, and suddenly your physics team needs to update the simulation, your animation team needs to create new movement cycles, your level design team needs to go back through every environment and check that the new mechanic does not break anything, your audio team needs new sound effects, and your QA team needs to write and execute hundreds of new test cases. What sounds like one feature is actually 20 work streams across 6 departments, and those work streams all generate bugs, and those bugs have to be found and fixed, and then tested again to make sure the fix did not create new bugs somewhere else. This is why development projects have a way of expanding in scope far beyond the original plan, and why budget overruns in this industry are not exceptions. They are the norm. The mechanism through which budgets explode is called scope creep, and it almost never happens because someone is being reckless. It happens because each individual decision to expand the project sounds completely reasonable at the time. Here is a real version of how this plays out. A studio greenlights a project with 50 developers, a $20 million budget, and a 3-year timeline. Things are going well in year 1, and management decides to add an open-world structure because that is what the market seems to want. Now the map has to be vastly larger. That requires more environment artists, more asset creation time, more testing. Then a new version of the game engine releases mid-development with dramatically better graphics, and the team wants to upgrade because they are competing against games that will use it. Upgrading an engine mid-development is enormously expensive in time and productivity. Then the publisher wants a simultaneous release on both last generation and current generation consoles to maximize the audience, which requires a separate optimization effort for each platform. Each of those decisions had a business logic behind it. Together, they turned a 50-person, $20 million, 3-year project into a 180-person, $85 million, 5-year project. That actually happened to Immortals of Avium, developed by Ascendant Studios and published by Electronic Arts. The development budget reached $85 million, with another $40 million in marketing on top. The game launched in August 2023 and sold a fraction of what it needed to break even. Within weeks, 45% of the studio staff were laid off, and the rest were eventually furloughed. It was not a bad game made by incompetent people. It was a technically ambitious project that got caught in the cost structure of modern AAA development at exactly the wrong moment. Before we talk about what happens when things go right, there is one more layer of spending that most people miss entirely. If you're getting value out of this breakdown, take a second to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people. Back to the costs, because here's the thing that will genuinely surprise you. Everything we have talked about so far, the year's salaries, the software, the hardware, the offices, all of that is just development spending. When the game is actually finished, when the code is complete and the final version is ready to be sent out to the world, that is not when the spending stops. That is when an entirely new round of spending begins. First, there is marketing, and not a modest marketing budget, a serious one. For AAA games, meaning the highest budget productions, marketing spending typically runs between 50 and 100% of the development budget. So a game that cost $100 million to build might cost another $50 to $100 million to market. Sony's Marvel Spider-Man 2 had a development budget of around $315 million, and a marketing and distribution spend estimated between $35 and $50 million on top of that. Why does marketing cost so much? Because there are tens of thousands of games released every year across PC and console storefronts, and the people who might buy your game have no idea it exists unless you tell them. Repeatedly, across multiple channels, with cinematic trailers, events, influencer partnerships, paid advertising, social media campaigns, and launch week promotions. Building the product and selling the product are two entirely different businesses, and they both require serious capital. Then there is localization. If you want to sell your game in Japan, Germany, Brazil, and France, which you do because those are major markets, your game needs to be translated and voice acted in those languages. For a game with significant spoken dialogue, localization across a dozen languages can cost between $1 and $2 million by itself. Then there are the platform certification processes. Every console platform has a quality certification program that your game must pass before it can be sold on their storefront. That takes time and costs money in both internal testing resources and submission fees. Then there are the servers. If your game has any online features, even just leaderboards or co-op, you need cloud server infrastructure that you are paying for continuously. And if your game is fully online, you are paying for those servers whether 10 people are playing or 10 million people are playing. And then there is customer support. Players have technical problems. They want refunds. They find bugs that your QA team missed. Every one of those interactions